It's good to see a good turnout. Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome the members of council, staff, and members of the public to our December 10th public information session and call this meeting to order. This is an open meeting. It's a public information session held for the purpose of public engagement on certain topics with the public, council, and staff. During a public information session, no member discusses or otherwise deals with any matter in any way that materially advances the business or decision-making of this council. At this time, I'd like to ask Mrs. Pearson for the Indigenous land acknowledgement, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. We acknowledge that this land on which we are gathered today is part of the ancestral land of the Chippewa, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi peoples, referred to collectively as the Anishinaabe. The town of Petrolia is located on the land associated with the Huron Tract Treaty, number 29 of 1827. We express gratitude for the land where we live, work, and play, and we are committed to working respectfully with the land and the Indigenous peoples who have called this land home.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. Now, the purpose of this meeting is to afford the public an opportunity to receive information relating to keeping of backyard chickens and provide input to the town staff and council. This meeting is specific to keeping of backyard chickens. Any unrelated comments shall not be brought forward at this meeting. Public wishing to address council on another topic are most welcome, and this can be completed through the clerk's office for inclusion with the next council meeting agenda. At this time, I'd like to ask Mrs. Pearson in regarding the public notice for this meeting, please.
Yes, Your Worship. We did post a public notice. It was distributed through our social medias, through our local newspaper, the Petrolia Independent, posted on our website and on our town boards.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. At this time, I'd like to introduce council. And on my left, your right, we have Councillor Hyatt, Deputy Mayor Field, Councillor O'Hara, Councillor Welsh, Councillor Clark, and I'm Mayor Brad Loosely. And I'd like to ask Mrs. Pearson to introduce the staff present, please.
Thank you. And I do go clockwise with our Director of Operations, Mr. Mike Thompson, our Director of Parks, Recreation, and Facilities, Mrs. Julie Bullock, our Fire Chief and Director of Public Safety, Mr. Rick Cousins, our Deputy Treasurer and Manager of Finance, Ms. Annette Strand, our Senior Planner, Mr. Trevor Benjamins, our Director of Marketing, Arts, and Communications, Ms. Larissa Ellsworth, our Deputy Clerk and Manager of Human Resources, Ms. Jessica Smith, our CIO and Treasurer, Mr. Rick Charlebois, and I am your Clerk, Director of Legislative Services, Mandy Pearson.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. We have number 6, information presentation. We have 2. Our first one is Mr. Trevor Benjamins, our Senior Planner. If Mr. Benjamins, if you'd like to come forward, please.
Good evening, Your Worship, Council, staff, and members of the public. I'm just here to provide some clarification on a couple questions that I've got in relation to backyard chickens. And I want to just start by providing some clarification on our current policy framework, which does not allow chickens currently in the town of Petrolia. So Petrolia is an interesting municipality in the county of Lambton that the municipal boundary is the settlement area boundary for the town, unlike some of our neighbors. So what that means is every land use within the town of Petrolia is an urban settlement area. So the uses that are allowed in the town of Petrolia are identified in our official plan, and they include residential, industrial, commercial, and open space uses. We do not have any agricultural designated land within the town of Petrolia. And further, and correspondingly, our zoning bylaw does not have any agricultural zones. So no agricultural livestock or activities are included within our bylaw, and therefore they are not permitted currently within the town. So that is why if you compare other bylaws from adjacent municipalities, for example, you will see sometimes definitions in their bylaw of what constitute backyard chickens. Some other municipalities within the county do allow them. So if council were, my second point is the next steps is for a motion to come forward at a future council meeting date, which would add definitions to our zoning bylaw to allow backyard chickens and whatever that definition looks like. And perhaps town staff would also prepare a separate bylaw which would regulate chickens and licensing and things like that.
Right.
So if there's any questions on that, I'll be happy to answer them.
Okay, I'll just to mention to council, again, we don't debate this. If any questions regarding clarification, we can certainly ask Mr. Benjamin. So I'll ask council. Is there any questions, clarifications that you would like at this time? If not, thank you, Mr. Benjamin, for coming to address council. Next, we have on our presentation is Mr. Scott Helps. And if you'd like to come forward, and I just want to just read this for everyone so you're aware of. Mr. Helps is the Zone 1 Director representing the counties of Essex, Kent, and Lambton, and the current chair of the Egg Farmers of Ontario Board of Directors. Mr. Helps, an egg farmer from Wyoming, has been on the Egg Farmers Ontario Board since 2012, vice chair since 2015, and became chair in 2020. Welcome and thank you for coming to provide the public and council with information relating to chickens. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. I didn't, I did have an introduction of myself, but it wasn't quite that lengthy. But yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for having me, Mr. Mayor and councillors. I really appreciate the fact that I have the opportunity to come here because I represent, as you've described, a group of farmers that are primary food producers, and our concerns around what we're going to be talking about this evening is around how that affects us or potentially could affect us. And that's what I'm going to kind of address. As well, I have sent out documents this morning. Sorry about the late time frame, but in those documents, there was 3 sheets. One of them was I will reference a little bit, was referring to having backyard chickens and experiences that we know of and things that you have to deal with. You guys are probably well aware, and the folks out here probably are as well. The other thing was just a scenario of some of the concerns that we have relating to different situations, diseases and whatnot. The third document was a description, and probably if you read it, it was fairly lengthy and very, very detailed, and I apologize about that. But the reason that I sent you that is because that is one of the things that I'm going to be talking a little bit about, and it's the concern, probably the biggest concern that relates to us as primary food producers and people that want to have chickens in backyards and so on and so forth. So I'll start with that first information sheet. There's different information on that sheet where communities have had to deal with different scenarios when you allow backyard flocks. I am not saying there's anyone here or out there going to do this, but the experience is experience, and that's what I know. So things like manure is an issue, rodents is an issue, feed draws the rodents, things of that nature, very common. Everybody uses those examples, but there's also death, things like that you have to deal with, and what do we do with that, and how do we handle that? And there's inspection, there's things that get a little bit, for everybody wants to have a few more, and next thing you know, who's going to control that, and different things like that. And that's what that one sheet was trying to reference. We certainly aren't necessarily saying that, because I mean, I'm an egg farmer. I've been an egg farmer for 40 years. I know why people would want to have chickens. I love having chickens, and I know that. But at the same token, there is issues that you will deal with in time. The second thing that I want to address is the disease side, which is our concern. And I can maybe shed some light on why that is a concern to us and how that does get kind of concerning. It's not necessarily one disease, it's many diseases. I will not mention them all. I will mention a couple, and I will go through what they are described like and how come they are so important to us. So I'll start off with the first one, and that is a disease that is fairly new to us. Avian metapneumovirus. These are big words. I don't mean to scare you off with the big words, but they are always big words. So avian metapneumovirus primarily causes a highly contagious acute upper respiratory tract. Chickens, birds always have respiratory diseases that are affecting them. This is important. It is an immediately notifiable disease, both federally and provincially. So there is no cure. So when you have this disease, you need to get rid of them. It's one thing to get rid of 6 birds. It's another thing to get rid of thousands of birds. Okay. In July 2024, the Officer of Chief Veterinarian of Ontario issued an advisory about this disease. The National Care for Animal Disease has confirmed metapneumovirus in Ontario and other provinces. In Ontario, it has been reported in many areas, including counties, lots of them. I won't go through them all. One of them is Lambton, for sure. Middlesex is a few, like close, and it's inside of us. The second disease I want to talk about is infectious laryngitis. Infectious laryngitis is a viral respiratory disease, respiratory again, which is highly contagious and spreads either direct contact with infected birds or something else that might people, whatever. It's most common in backyard flocks. The concern around some of these backyard flocks is that you will have a flock, say you have 4 birds, they die. No one really reports it. We know this happens. This is not, these are the things that I'm telling you are things that we've experienced, by the way. And so it just goes unnoticed. Meanwhile, there's been tracking, walking around and everything like that happening. And that's just the way it ends up. And it will happen like that. So, so far this fall, the command center has issued ILT biosecurity advisories for several cities and towns. ILT is immediately notifiable both federally and provincially. What happens in our world in the bird business is because I'm the chair, I'm one of 3 people, I think it is, that as soon as there's a notifiable disease, I get the notice that it is, and then it goes out from there. And there's quarantine areas, there's different things that have to happen when that stuff goes on. That's still happening today. The last disease I want to talk about is the one that everybody will be recognizing. That's avian influenza. Avian influenza is also a reportable disease, no cure. It's a matter of if you get it in one of your barns, you have to dispose of them birds, and that's the end of that. The concern about avian influenza, as you hear it on the news, and it's true, it is mutating and changing. For example, maybe 3 years ago, you might have heard that a fox got it, for an example. Well, now out there in the U.S., I don't have the number. I do have the number somewhere here, but I'm not going to look it up. There's an enormous number of dairy cattle that have got it down in the States. So it is changing, and there's changes that are happening, and that's part of the concern, that if you have chickens everywhere all over the place, you're going to have more of this changing and what's happening in that disease world. And they have vaccinations for it, but we're not allowed to use those vaccinations, because once you use those vaccinations, there's trade barriers, there's different things that come up. US is the same as us in that area. So there's reasons that you don't go down that road. If you go down that road, then everybody has to go down that road. It's not a one-shot deal for somebody to just make that decision. Some of the areas that what's happening is the H5N2, the H5N1, and I think that was in some of those documents that you maybe read or maybe not, but that was just an example of how you, all of a sudden it's like, where did that come from? That was something that just showed up just recently it was actually November 8th, 2024, where all of a sudden it went to this H5N2 subtype. So all of a sudden you're dealing with something new again. It wasn't necessarily new out there, but it was something new to us. So then you start dealing with a whole raft of other things as well. when it comes to a farmer and having to deal with these challenges, like we have biosecurity protocols, we have all those things that we try to put up that barrier, and I have to say we have a very good system to be able to do that, but yet it seems to be filtering into our birds. In BC right now, they're having a major problem. I don't know what they're at now. I think it's getting close to 2 million birds. It's over 1 million birds. Maybe I better put it that way right now, that they've had to get rid of in the last probably 3 months. And it's a bit of a crisis because you take out, they have 4 million birds for an example in BC. You take out over 1 million to 2 million birds out of the system. Now you got a problem with the food chain. And that's what one of my messages that I want to make sure you understand, that this can indirectly or directly affect the food chain, because when you have primary producers that are around this situation, and we do not know how it gets in the barn necessarily. We have ideas. We know it has to do with migratory birds and a lot of other things, but there's a whole lot of other things we just do not know about. We don't have no control over that. It just seems like all of a sudden it comes in, and BC's the group right now that's taken the brunt. There's other areas, Quebec, Manitoba, Saskatchewan are dealing with that disease right now in a big way, and it's very concerning to the food chain right now. I think I will leave it at that. I think you get the message of what I'm trying to portray. I really thank you for letting me come here. I'm more than happy to take any questions. If you have any concerns or questions of stuff that you read, I'm more than happy to do that. Otherwise, I think I should just leave it at that, and
All right.
we'll let you go.
So just hang on. I'll ask council. Is there any questions or clarification that you'd like to ask at this time? Councillor Welsh.
I'm just wondering if backyard chicken was to die. I'm assuming they can die from other things also. Is there a method by which they should be dealt with, and someone would examine them to see if one of these things was the case? Okay.
So two things I'll take out of that question maybe, and one is direct and one is maybe a little bit indirectly. So there's the veterinarian use is what you're asking, I think, and that is the case. A veterinarian would have to get involved in order to subtype it and test for it and determine it. So if you don't call a veterinarian, then you would never know. And that is the only way you're going to find out whether you have one of these diseases, because they all are affecting the chicken in the same way or the bird in the same way. The other thing is euthanization and euthanization. It's something that is something you might want to have to be aware of if you're going to go down this road, because you can't just leave the chicken laying there suffering. You might have to do something about that. And the veterinarian, that's another area they may have to deal with. Thanks.
Councillor Hyatt.
Discussion through you. So do we locally have veterinarians that would service this type of backyard chicken program?
That's a great question. I honestly don't.
Excuse me, Mr. Helps, address it to the chair, not to the individual,
I'm
please.
sorry
Okay.
about that. Perfect.
Yep.
I do not know. I do know that I have veterinarians I can contact. They're not necessarily in our area. They're probably not in our area. Well, the ones I know are not in our area. The one that's referenced in that document is from Guelph. So there are veterinarians around I know of, but I don't know that how much they know about chickens. I don't know.
Councillor Hyatt, are you okay with that?
Yep, thank you.
Any other questions from council? I guess I just have one, just again, and I've gone through your material, and I'm sorry if I've missed it, but is there any liability for the municipality or the corporation regarding these different diseases, et cetera?
Not that I know of.
Okay, thank you. All right, are we all okay? Listen, thank you very much for coming to address this planning committee.
Thank
Okay.
you very much.
Thank you. Okay, that's our presentations. It'll move now to some public input. We do have some information that has already come in. One is from a Mr. Chris Brait of 285 Redwood Court, Petrolia. and I don't believe he is here tonight.
It's actually.
Oh, sorry. Would you like to come forward? Would you like us to read the letter? Council all has a copy of your correspondence. Just to highlight it, come on forward. Thanks, Mandy. I didn't see him there.
That's okay.
And I guess just for the record, again, I know I stated it, but would you please state your name, full name and your address, please?
Yeah, my full name is Christopher Brait, 285 Redwood Court. So, so I just have some concerns and, but I came also from a farm bank background. I have experience with farms. So basically, I just wrote some stuff here. So I live right across from Becky and Steve Creel, and they come from a long line of professional farmers, and they know what they're doing, and they have a chicken coop, and there's no odors. And for the record, I don't have a problem with their coop at all. And I think what they do is great. And I think that however this goes, if the town does approve this, I think that what they're doing can be used as a benchmark for all other operations. I guess that's kind of what I would say, because they're doing something right. And, but however, so getting to the other side of that is not everyone in town has the experience of taking care of chickens. And I think the buzzword I hear today is, free range chickens. So someone's going to say, oh, I'll just put some chicken wire around my perimeter fence and throw them some feed and I'm going to have some chickens. And I think there's a lot of concern there with, he mentioned manure in that. So I work for Bunker Poultry Farms. So when you have manure, you have problems with rodent varmints, raccoons, and there's even coyotes. It's not hyperbole. I hear them. They're just on the north perimeter here. So if you're gonna have chickens, they need to be in a coyote-proof coop. And I think that you should have a feed and a manure management plan, like how you're gonna manage it. What's the other thing? I pay a license for my dog, so I think that there should be nothing wrong with licensing fees and annual inspections. So those are some of my concerns. The biggest concern is like rodents and varmint, because if it's not cared for, the manure is not kept dry, that's going to draw them in, because there's undigested feed still in manure, and you're going to have rodents that are going to come after that. The other thing is if you have chickens in one neighbor A, they will have, they're roaming around. You got neighbor B who's got a tomcat that runs wild. He's going to go over there and have chicken wings at night. So I've seen it with my own eyes. I've seen domestic cats and barn cats and domestic dogs. I've seen them kill and eat chickens. That's a reality. That's just the natural world. So neither for nor against. I just think that if we do allow it, I just think there just should be some basic rules in place that govern it. And I think Becky and Steve do a great job. They have a great setup, and I don't have a problem with theirs.
Okay, just before you go, any questions from council or clarification? I know we've all got a copy of the correspondence. Seeing none, thank you for coming to address this public meeting.
Thank you.
Next on our list, we have Mrs. Judy Kroll, who submitted correspondence. I don't see Judy here. I wonder, Mrs. Pearson, would you like to read that correspondence, or do you want to?
I can read that. That's not a
Okay.
problem. We did have some that were submitted that not necessarily are here to present, so I can definitely provide that.
Thank you.
To mayor and council, as a past egg farmer, I wanted to provide council with some food for thought with regard to the raising and caring for backyard chickens. Just imagine walking into a chicken barn and finding your chickens all dead. That is what has happened to a farm in British Columbia when a feed driver came in contact with the avian influenza by way of feces from migrating Canadian geese while unloading feed at the farm. The driver walked the virus right into the farmer's barn on his shoes. That flock of birds and those on neighboring farms, to prevent further spread of influenza, had to be destroyed. Backyard chicken owners would not have any idea, I believe, why their chickens might die. Chicken farmers have access to poultry veterinarians and nutritionists whom help them to care for their chickens. Chickens are susceptible to other disease too. Backyard chicken owners are at risk of disease as well. And where there are dead carcasses, and where are their dead carcasses going? ? Municipal garbage? ? The farmers in British Columbia whom experienced avian influenza were not allowed to have the dead birds leave the property. They had to be composted on the farm. How much space do these chickens have in the backyard coops? Chicken farmers have space per bird requirements in their barns to allow them the freedom to move around and be properly cared for. Rodents. Farmers have to do monthly checks of bait stations that are outside surrounding barns as to have no mice enter their barns. They also put a gravel around the outside of the barn as mice do not like to walk across the gravel as it hurts their feet, a natural way to reduce mice from wanting to enter the barn. In the barns, tin cats are used that contain no bait in them to catch a mouse, or in the event one might find its way into the barn. Flies are also disease carriers. They can be a nuisance with manure as flies will breed in it. Where are they spreading their manure? Farmers are not allowed to spread manure from December to March 31st due to runoff into ditches when the ground is frozen and snow covered. Farmers have manure storage for that period of time. What happens when manure is spread in the backyard, not incorporated into the soil, and due to rainfall, snow melt, or frozen ground, it runs off into a neighboring backyard? High levels of nitrogen found in chicken manure can burn plants. What if they gave or sold their surplus eggs to a neighbor and the neighbor got salmonella? Thank you very much for your time and allowing me to educate you on my past experience egg farming. I do understand that some people have these backyard flocks due to high food prices that we are experiencing today. Please remember, though, that farmers feed cities and towns. Yours truly, Judy Kroll, and a Skillam Township farmer.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. And again, this correspondence has been circulated to council. Any questions regarding that? If not, we'll move on. And I believe the next one we have, Mrs. Pearson, is the Lambton Public Health.
Correct.
Is there someone here from the Lambton Public Health to speak?
It's myself again.
Okay, Mrs. Pearson, go ahead, please.
Thank you. And this comes from Lambton Public Health. In general, Lambton Public Health is supportive of the allowance of backyard chickens, provided that owners are required to implement risk reduction strategies to prevent the spread of certain infectious diseases and be educated on the hygiene measures while handling birds. Risk of infectious diseases. Infectious disease transmission is a known human health risk associated with backyard chickens. Salmonellosis, and I'm probably saying that very wrong. I probably butchered that. And one I am not going to say, a bacteriosis, are the most frequent infections reported in relation to backyard chickens and live poultry exposure. Chickens can carry salmonella in their intestines or eggs without symptoms of illness, which can be transferred onto their feathers and the surrounding environment. Avian influenza is also an infection of concern when considering introducing backyard chicken ownership. In 2021, H5N1 avian influenza viruses began to circulate in North America, and there is a risk of a wild bird population transmitting avian influenza to backyard flocks. This disease is highly pathogenic to chickens, and while transmission to humans is rare, there has been reported cases globally. Additionally, outbreaks in backyard flocks have been reported in the US and Canada, including Southern Ontario. Risk and reduction strategies. In general, studies have found limited awareness of the association between infectious diseases risk and the live poultry contact, as well as lack of biosecurity measures among flock owners. Backyard chicken owners can reduce the risk of illness through a variety of measures, such as hand washing before and after handling chickens, feeding them and cleaning chicken coops, wearing dedicated clothing and shoes to avoid cross-contamination, refraining from kissing and snuggling live chickens, maintaining cleanliness of the premises, example, sanitizing equipment, removing wet manure, preventing contact between backyard chickens and all wild birds and animals, and reporting illnesses in chicken flocks and seeking veterinary expertise. I apologize, that was about this big on my screen.
That was good. Thank you for that, Mrs. Pearson. Any questions from council regarding that correspondence? Okay, thank you. I think the next thing on my list we have is Mr. and Mrs. Maharg.
Correct.
And are they present? If not, I don't have.
Tara.
Yep. Please come forward. State your full name and address, please.
It's Tara Maharg, 4064 Catherine Street here in Petrolia.
Okay.
I'm just going to read
No, go ahead.
That's
That's
okay.
fine.
So I'm just writing to express my concerns regarding the proposal to allow backyard chickens within the town of Petrolia. I have previously submitted the survey with my response indicating I was okay with people having chickens so long as proper bylaws and education were required. In the time since I've submitted my survey, I've had many discussions on this topic with others and done some research on chickens. And I have since changed my opinion on the matter to be against allowing backyard chickens, which is why I'm writing today. While I understand that this initiative may be seen as a way to promote sustainability and self-sufficiency, I believe it's important to carefully consider the negative impacts that could result from such a decision. First and foremost, the presence of chickens in residential areas can pose significant concerns regarding public health and safety. I won't get into the diseases and whatnot because we've already heard about that. But I will say, obviously, as by the Lambton Public Health said, and the gentleman that spoke earlier, that those diseases can also spread to humans and pets, and particularly vulnerable individuals as children or elderly or weakened immune systems. As a dog owner, I'm concerned of that having chickens in such close proximity could allow for the spread of diseases to family pets. Chickens can also carry external parasites such as like fleas and ticks. So if any dogs or cats come into close contact with chickens or their living areas, they may pick up these parasites, which could lead to potential health issues or the spread of diseases that ticks and fleas can carry. Also, I have questions. What about if someone's dog happens to eat chicken feces or comes into contact with it, dog or cat? They could be ingesting harmful bacteria or parasites leading to sickness or infections. Also, if someone's chickens aren't contained properly, allowing them to get loose, there is the potential that neighboring dogs or cats could hurt or kill the chickens, causing issues among neighbors. Another major concern for me is the potential for increased rodent and pest populations. Obviously already said as well, but mice, rats, coyotes, and other wildlife will be potentially attracted to the chicken coops and their feed if not properly managed. Then I would just say a question around how would the proper disposal of chicken feces and carcasses work? I'm also nervous about the potential smells impacting my home and backyard and being unable to use my outdoor spaces if people are putting those on compost heaps that might be close to the neighbors. Additionally, there may be complications relating to zoning, property values, and general aesthetics of the town. Allowing chickens could create a patchwork of properties with varying levels of upkeep, which might negatively impact the visual appeal of residential neighborhoods. Potential buyers may also be deterred from purchasing homes near properties with chickens, fearing the associated nuisances. On top of all these potential concerns, I would like to add that if backyard chickens are allowed, there would need to be an increased bylaw officer presence or availability to enforce the rules and handle neighbor concerns, which could be immense. I'm not to speak about that. I don't really know how that works, but I just wanted to point that out. Yeah, I believe that the town of Petrolia has a responsibility to ensure the well-being and safety of all residents, and I respectfully urge the council to carefully consider these potential negative impacts, before making a decision on allowing backyard chickens. While the benefits of having chickens might seem appealing to a small subset of the population, the broader community must also be taken into account. Thanks for your consideration.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions from council? Questions or clarification? If not, thank you for coming to address this public meeting.
Okay,
I think next on our list is Van Klinken.
correct. Yes.
Is Mr. and Mrs. Van Klinken present by any chance? Would
Second
you,
up again.
would you read that correspondence, Mrs. Pearson, please?
Certainly. Hello, we are writing to express our strong disapproval of backyard chickens. We know that this is a hot topic, but it is far from a simple one. We live on a funny corner lot in town with 5 backyards butting up to ours, and they are not large lots. If all of our neighbors were to have chickens, we fear that the disruption, smell, noise, and possible conflict between neighbors would be significant. I know that it has been said that an officer may have to be assigned to enforce all bylaws associated with chickens, but what that does little to reassure us. We know of 5 different households who have confessed to having chickens in their yard now. Well, it is not lawful, so we don't expect that those families will be the first to follow the bylaws. Also, does the town want to pay for a person to go around and check that all the rules are being followed and to enforce them? On top of that, would the taxpayers be expected to pay that salary? And what about the complaints that come along with people trying to share their summer backyard with chickens? Who is going to have to listen and respond to those? And the conflict that may arise between neighbors because of these chickens? Who is going to mediate? What happens if chickens get diseased? Who disposes of those and where? How far away from the other person's yard does the coop have to be? And who tells the owners to move it when they don't comply? There are pros and cons to living in town and living in the country. If you want to have chickens, one of those pros is having the right to have chickens. But if you don't want chickens, one of the pros is that you don't have to share your backyard with barn animals. This is the part of town living that we expect and appreciate. It takes some work sometimes to live harmoniously with neighbors, and I doubt that this will help, and it may not be a war the town wants to fight. We know we don't. Thank you for considering our feelings on this issue. Ben and Tiffany Van Klinken.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. Any questions or clarification from council? If not, I believe that's all we have actually registered, Mrs. Pearson.
That's correct. Those are the only correspondence I received to my attention.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, I will open it up to the public to address this council or this public meeting. There is a limit to 5 minutes when it's a public in attendance to do this, but I now open it up. Is there anyone wishing to address this public meeting? I think Heidi, you were first. Please come forward, state your full name and address, please.
Heidi McNabb, 421 Greenfield Street, Mayor Bradley, proud member of Petrolia, third generation agricultural family. Recently, I should say actually a little while ago, there was an article in the Independent, an article about a gentleman that had issues with his neighbor's chickens regarding rodents and smell. I have chickens, as we all know. I have no rodents. My neighbors have not said anything to me about issue with rodents. But you don't have to have chickens to have rodents in your backyard. Anyone with a bird feeder, with the bird seed, which is mixed grain all over the yard, all over the ground, will have rodents, rats, mice, rabbits, raccoons, everything. I've had possums, skunks, possums. On Greenfield Street here, we have deer in the yard. We have coyotes coming down our street. This is all long before I had chickens. Sorry. Regarding the, and then also mentioned about the migratory birds bringing the avian flu. And again, too, so are we going to prohibit bird feeders and things like that in town as well? If, because if they're bringing in the migratory birds, they're bringing in the avian flu as well. And what about all the Canada geese that are down in Bridgeview Park? I mean, are they carrying the avian flu as well? Are they going to be dealt with then as well? Smell. His neighbor had an issue with the smell, which I completely understand. There have been no complaints from my neighbors regarding the smell. And as Councillor Liz Welch had mentioned at the October meeting, she was in my backyard for another reason and no smells as those. But again, it's also proper disposal of the chicken manure, which I understand. To me, it's just like, it's being a responsible chicken owner, like being a responsible dog owner. I have people walk their dogs past my house. The dog does their business. They scoop it up. They take their doggy bag. They go. Other dog owners take the doggy bag and they throw it in my flower bed, in my cedar hedge, and I have to deal with it. Some dog owners, simply let their dogs do their business and keep walking. I have to deal with this. Again, there's responsible dog owners and there are responsible chicken owners. And I feel that I was a responsible dog owner and I'm a responsible chicken owner. Also in the article, again, from the Independent a couple of months ago, they kept mentioning Tecumseh and Wyoming not permitting chickens. Okay, that's 2 communities. But what about all the communities that are allowing chickens? I mean, again, Sarnia allowing 12 miniature, 6 full size. I did a little bit of research. Kitchener allows 4. St. Thomas allows 4. Guelph allows 10. Niagara Falls, Brampton, Norfolk County, Orangeville allows 3. Brantford, things like that. They all have fees, they all have inspections, they all have limits, which I'm completely for. All have permits, I'm completely for that. As Chris said, if you're going to have a dog with a dog permit, which again, I have in the past, I have chickens, I expect to pay for a chicken permit. I'm fine with that as well. Issues regarding chickens, again, Tecumseh said no to chickens because of all the issues they're getting the phone calls. Again, look to Sarnia, Adam McDonald, Sarnia bylaw officer. To quote him, he goes, but I wouldn't have said that we've had an over and abundant amount of issues or calls or complaints regarding chickens. So that's it. Thank you.
And Heidi, did you have a copy of that I can?
I will submit it to you. Yep.
I also need the last one too, please.
Oh, I did. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I will submit that one as well then.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Before you go,
Yeah.
and councillors, is there any questions or clarification? If not, Heidi, thank you for coming to address this public meeting.
Thank you, Mary Lucy.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to address this public meeting? Come forward, please. State your name and address.
I submitted a little bit after 5 o'clock. I just wanted clerks to read it. Did you not get it?
No,
It-
so our office closes at 4:30.
Oh, I
So
thought
anything
on,
after 4:30.
on the ad, it said, like on the paper, it said you can submit it until 6 o'clock.
Here at the meeting,
Oh.
yes. So you can submit it by coming forward
Okay.
at the public meeting.
Okay,
Sorry, and your name?
It's Rebecca Bain or Rebecca Crawl.
Oh, yeah, no.
Um,
Oh, yeah, I
I-
got one from a Diane call, was it? No? Okay, sorry. All right, sorry. Go ahead.
My phone's on 4% and I'm probably gonna cough up a storm, but I will try. That's why I just submitted it. Okay.
Oh, and your address, please, for the record.
288 Redwood Court, Petrolia, Ontario.
Thank you.
As my delegation, among others, requesting the permission to allow backyard chickens is the reason we were all gathered here, I feel the need to speak out again on behalf of many Petrolia residents. Addressing tonight's educational presentations and a few others who have submitted letters as well, I want to thank you for sharing your knowledge and expertise. All wonderful information and suggestion put forward. I appreciate that we need all the education as we can get on this to ensure this runs as smoothly as possible if council decides to move forward with what most Petrolia residents seem to want. I think the main focus and concerns is the blue flu, in my opinion, among similar diseases. All of the other concerns can be accompanied and accomplished and figured out fairly easily, in my opinion. The fact that we need to ensure that even backyard chickens using protocols and changing footwear, wearing boot covers when needed, hygiene, limited access to outsiders in your coop, among a few other things mentioned within the public health and Mr. Help's presentation to ensure our own coops remain free of disease that is often from droppings of geese and seagulls being the lead spreaders, so we don't affect the farmers in Lambton County. A simple walk in the park could mean bringing harmful bacteria in on your shoes. Being mindful is key. That being said, I've talked to 5 separate chicken farmers whose farms are located within Lambton County, and they all mutually agree that if chicken farmers' barns are going to get the flu or diseases, it's because they themselves and staff aren't following proper protocol. The chicken farmers that I know are very strict. I don't think they won't be skipping steps. I don't believe they're going to get sick. I am confident that we won't have this issue around here. There is zero difference between chickens that are allowed in Marthaville and other very close by towns than the chickens that we could have in our backyards here in Petrolia. If there's going to be geese spreading disease, it will be spread regardless of some families supplying poultry for their own families. On each day that the chickens have been brought up, including tonight, it was noted my small backyard coop was professionally built and no odor, among lots of other positive feedback. I am more than willing to volunteer my time to help Petrolia residents share what I know. It is very important to have the knowledge of growing your own food and the being self-sufficient. Heaven forbid anything were to happen, no one would be prepared or even know where to start. I may have the upper hand, as clearly being a crawl, I'm automatically known for eggs. My husband was born and raised an egg farmer, so I do have the benefit of having a lot of knowledge on the topic. So that is why my coop is so well maintained, rodent-free and pest controlled, including flies, and my birds are very well taken care of and have healthy, balanced diet. I do believe most of it should be common sense. There will be rules provided on this, and that is why the town had a part on the survey where you numbered your concerns. Together with the knowledge put forth and suggestions, even from Lambton Public Health, I am optimistic that this will work, as they have given us knowledge and do's and don'ts to ensure everything is clean and sanitary. I've met a lot of people through social media that are very much for chickens. A ton of people that I don't even know. They're just residents of Petrolia. A A lot of them are in support of chickens. Some support chickens and they don't want chickens themselves. Some do want chickens. And there was a few, not many people that went on social media and they didn't want chickens. A lot of comments, including a farming community that doesn't allow backyard chickens. When I was a kid, most people in town had coops. Sarnia allows chickens. How is backyard chickens not allowed in Petrolia? I've wanted chickens for years. Never give up on your right to grow your own food, and this would really help my family. Among a lot of people saying, finally, I'm in and I support this. I, with everyone else, is also interested in the true survey results and wish they were live and posted for all to see. A lot of people are concerned that they believe that most people voted for and in support of chickens, and ultimately the town invited the egg board and is just trying to shut us down.
Excuse me, your 5 minutes is up, so can you kind of wrap this up for me, please?
That's basically it.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. Just before you go, hang on. Any questions from council or clarification? If not, thank you for coming to address this public meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address this board, please come forward. Come up to the microphone, please. State your name and address, please.
My name is Ursula Gnass. I live at 296 Eureka Street, Petrolia.
Okay, thank you. And speak right into the mic or move it a little closer.
Okay,
There.
okay.
Yep, thank
How's
you.
that?
Perfect.
Okay. Good evening, Your Worship, ladies and gentlemen. As to the topic of backyard chickens, we have heard the acronym NIMBY, not in my backyard. Well, I say yes, in my backyard. My first and main reason is an environmental one. Kitchen scraps and food waste should not go to a landfill site. That's where they decompose and cause methane gas, which is not good for the environment. Home composting, such waste has been encouraged at times by different levels of the government. But really, who composts? Show of hands?
I have 3 of them.
So do I. Okay. It's easier to scrape waste into the garbage can. So this is where chickens come in. Some of you have read my letter in the local paper as to projects in Belgium, an agricultural country, and Austin, Texas, a notable American city. Chickens, 3 per household, were used to turn kitchen food scraps and waste into eggs and fertilizer. The results were great. The Belgian product, which included 2,000 households, reduced kitchen waste to landfill by 100 tons in the first month alone. That's a lot. That's a lot, okay? Shame on us. We're not doing that. And we could be. We should be. We have to do better for the environment, for our grandchildren, for their grandchildren. So I say, let's have chickens in the backyard to help us to do better. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions from council or clarification? Seeing none, thank you for coming to address this public meeting.
So everybody understood what I said.
I hope so. I did. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Yes, Mandy.
Thank you, Mrs. Nass. Could
You'd
you
like
just
to
leave-
have this?
Absolutely. If you could leave that with Jessica, that would be perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address this public meeting, please come forward, state your name. It's you next.
My name is Dale Aiken. I live at 4042 Mulberry Place. And I have lived beside chickens for quite some time. At the beginning, I had no problem with them at all. Over the course of the last year, my property has been infested with mice. And I'm not talking a couple, I'm talking hundreds. Yeah. And I have an all brick house. I thought I'd be safe. We do not keep our garbage outside. We do not have a wood pile. We have nothing that should attract them. The difference being within the last year, the owner of the chickens next door to me, I don't really feel has been taking proper care of them. As to the smell, we never had a problem with the smell before, but this past year we have had a problem with the smell. The mouse problem got so bad that we've called an exterminator because it's just not safe. I have them in my attic, I have them in my garage, I have them everywhere. So I've spent almost $800 so far, and I had to wait 6 months for the exterminator because they all have quite a long list. As to the work that's been done, I still have mice. I was offered two choices. One was the $800 where they went around and they sealed up everything on the house, all the windows, like the basement windows, all the little vents in the brick have special stuff in them so they can breathe, but rodents can't get in. Along my garage, there was copper mesh put on the sides of the doors, and basically everything that could be done was done. They told me that the only other step I have left is to seal all around my eaves. I have new eaves on the house and eave troughs, but looks like I'm going to have to go that step, and that's $1,200. So I don't feel I should be out of pocket that kind of money. And I did not ask for chickens. I bought a house in town, not in the country. Those are my main concerns. The smell, like I put in the letter to all of you, was pretty bad a few times. So, you know, if you do allow them, who's going to police that? Like, am I going to have to call every time I get a bad smell? And what's going to be done? And the same with the rodent issue. I've been throwing those dead mice in the garbage, but now I listen to Mr. Kroll and I'm thinking, well, maybe I shouldn't have been doing that. I don't know. Those are my concerns. So thank you very much.
Okay, just hang on for a sec. Council, any questions, clarification? We did receive your correspondence, so we do have all that. All right, seeing none, thank you for coming to address
you.
this public meeting. And I like your pin, by the way. Anyone else wishing to address this public meeting at this time? Please come forward. State your name and address, please.
And through your worship,
Name is Isaiah
could I have you spell your last name for me? I don't want to make an error.
Musyj.
Thank you.
That's not a problem. Not the first time.
Okay.
My name is Isaiah Mouche. I live at 524 Grove Street, Petrolia. I got 5 minutes. I'm gonna do this quick. A chicken illness. He mentioned the bird influenza and a couple other ones. I'm not gonna try to say. I have 5 chickens in my backyard. I don't have a truck driver delivering bins of grain or chicken feed weekly, daily. Someone that's been at potentially multiple other chicken farms in the area. I don't have people coming into my backyard like that. Most chicken farms are the one I'm aware of. They get the chicks, they raise them for 8 weeks, they're gone, they clean them, and they get another load of chickens. They have chickens coming in and out constantly on the go, here and there, all the time. I don't have birds coming in and out weekly, daily. I've got my 5 birds. I've had them for over a year. I don't intend on getting any more. I don't plan on swapping birds out here and there. I'm not going to do that. So in regards, like it keeps coming up, the agricultural side of things. We're regular people with a couple of chickens in our backyard. We're not talking about tens of thousands or thousands of birds, moving birds constantly all the time, having hundreds of eggs on hand at any given time. I get maybe 4 eggs a day if I'm lucky. 4, maybe 5. I'm not burning through all kinds of feed. Like I said, random people, chicken run. If chickens are properly housed and maintained, they don't have an urge. I've found mine haven't had an urge to try to jump a fence yet. They haven't tried to get out. They're not trying to get in the neighbors' backyards. They're happy with the space that they have, and they're not trying to find more. Again, the chicken manure, it's come up a couple times this meeting and the last meeting. What am I doing with my dog poop? It's going in the garbage. If I'm scraping it in the backyard, it's going in a pile in the compost, or it's going in the garbage. Cat feces, whatever you want to call it, manure shit. It's the same thing. You scoop it, you clean it, and it goes in the garbage. Chicken, we shouldn't be worried about where it's going to end up when we're not regulating the other animals where it ends up. If we're not worried about where that's going, why are we so focused on where the chicken stuff's going? Annual inspections. I don't have someone come to check if my dog's living in good conditions every year, every couple months, every 2 years, every 3 years. Nobody cares. I have a dog. Nobody's coming to check to see if my dog's okay. He's very healthy and does not leave the couch very often. But why do we need to have someone look at chickens? Nobody comes to check my dog. Nobody's checking on your dog. I don't know if you have a dog, Mr. Mayor, but nobody's checking on your dog. If there's a problem, they'll come look and they'll do what they need to do. And 100%, I understand that if there's a problem, they got to do their job. But nobody's coming to check on my dog, or my cats, or my household. The salmonella, you may get salmonella from potentially if I give eggs to a family member or a neighbor, and they could get salmonella or the liability of that. Cook your food properly. If you can't cook an egg, I'm not gonna be nice up here. Well, again, Rebecca touched on it, but the wildlife and the birds and they even flew that they could step in potentially a wild geese manure and get the flu or a disease. The birds fly over town almost every day. We have hundreds of them down in the parks. Are we going to start putting up like I know you can get devices to scare them off, or we're going to have someone sit there with a pellet gun and throw some pellets whenever they land? Like we're talking about trying to control what the chickens are potentially getting from wildlife, but the wildlife is here. The chickens didn't bring them here; they're here. Rodents, coyotes. There are like I've had rats in my back, the mice, deer mice, but they've been in my backyard since long before I've had chickens. I work in a local oil field. They're everywhere, and I don't have chickens out there anymore. I have coyotes out there. I went deer hunting, and that's where I got my deer. The wildlife is here. Whether we like it or not, they spread disease. It's not the best situation in the world, but we can't just start killing everything. We can't say no deer allowed in town because we said so. Put up a big fence. You can't control that. It's natural life. That's how it works. Property value. I have chickens. My neighbor's house didn't go down in value because I have chickens. If someone's looking to buy a house and they don't want chickens and the neighbors have chickens and they're against that, that's not my problem. That's not your problem. That's not any of yours problem. If you're trying to sell a house and someone says, "Oh, I don't like chickens because I don't want to buy your house because your neighbors have chickens," find someone else. There's lots of people looking. Bylaw doesn't say we can't have chickens. Dogs bark all day, but no one cares. We're worried about noise and chicken noises, but nobody's gonna. I have a neighbor that has a dog in his backyard and barks all day because he's outside all day. But what we keep talking about noise, but why don't we go after those people that have dogs that sit in their backyard all day?
I'm just going to ask you, your time is up.
Yeah.
But I do want to mention there is a bylaw in effect. If the dog is barking, you can certainly report that and that will be investigated. I'd just like to ask, tell me, your dog, is it licensed?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll open it up to council. Any questions? Thank you for coming to address this public meeting.
Yeah, no worries.
Great. All right. Please come forward. Again, state your name and address, please.
My name's Joel Weed. I live at 545 Princess Street. So I've had chickens in town since 2020, and it's been a great experience. I've had animals my whole life when I've been young, and so when my kids ask me, like, "Hey, Dad, you had all these animals when you were young. Can we have some?" We got chickens. Now, we built a glorious coop. They've got like their own shed. I hired somebody to build the fence. It's basically got a farm fence. I will say my situation is ideal where I am. We do have a big 3-acre lot, but the experience has been great for the kids. My sister lives right down the street. Her kids come down. The kids kind of learn about chores and stuff like that. They collect the eggs. People, my family and friends all eat the eggs. The food has never been an issue. I've never had a rodent issue. In fact, we used to live right next door and we had a bigger rodent issue there and we didn't have any birds at all there. Right. So, I will say that I would suggest if there was a problem, I wouldn't be against a permit. I mean, I don't think we need to charge for a permit, but I mean, if we did have to have a permit system so we knew where everybody's chickens were, I wouldn't be against that. And then if there was an argument between neighbors, that you just lose your permit, you lose your privilege to have chickens. But The chickens have been great for my property. I compost all the chicken manure goes into our backyard. I mean, we have over 50 varieties of fruit trees, and I wouldn't have any of them if it wasn't for the chicken manure. I mean, it's done wonders, and the rest goes on the garden. To supplement their food, I mean, I take all the waste from the community fridge, all that bread. I mean, like we're talking like a rolling green bin. It would go in the landfill. What would they do if I'm not allowed to have chickens? And nobody is going to come for that stale bread, right? The produce from the grocery stores, like this stuff doesn't just all go to the landfill. Like a lot of community hobby farmers take this food, right? And on your way out of town, like there's lots of hobby farmers that only have 2 acres and they have chickens. They're just outside of town. I get it. They don't have a lot of neighbors, but as far as the avian flu and stuff like that goes, they're allowed to have it. It's not an argument for them. So I would just say that it's been a great experience and I wouldn't want to lose it.
Okay. All right. Before you go, again, council, any questions, clarification? Seeing none, thank you for coming to address this public meeting. I think you're next over there. Come on over. Come on up. I think we all know who you are, but for the record, I need you to state your.
Not be a good sign.
Yeah, it's a good sign, but please state your name.
Laurie Tigner, 218 Eureka Street. So just a couple of comments. I grew up with chickens. We had Dudley Hatchery. We raised thousands of chickens, and I mean thousands, nothing like Scott, but thousands of them. So through my whole life, I've been experienced with them or been interfaced with them with different farmers. And there's nothing that's been said tonight that is inaccurate as far as disease and all the things that go along with it. But that's not just for chickens. So I would look at town has been very favorable with bylaws, very open to listen and progressive for addressing concerns. And I think a standard or standards, a set standard says if we're doing something, it's defined. There's no guessing at it. I have 5.65 acres, so I don't have a problem. I got a bush, and I won't say I've had them for the last 10 years. However, my belief is that it's reasonable to have chickens. If you go online, and I'm sure that you have, you can get thousands of documents associated US and Canada where chickens and not professional people raising them. And there's a lot of good reports. There's some negatives and there's things that you can learn by. And if we do accept this, we put our standards, and I would encourage you to go online and look at the pros and cons where they are allowed. So there's a lot of good reports and there's some learnings that I would certainly encourage that we would look at doing it. But for me and for my household, we're happy with chickens. I've not had a neighbor complain. The neighbors don't mind the free eggs. I'm not putting large production out that 3 or 4 of the family gets free eggs, but it's something that I've always done. I'm very careful and cautious how it's housed. For quiet, you don't want roosters. That's just about anywhere you go, and that's a no-no. The noise elevates. Most people don't like to wake up at 5 in the morning. So for me, I would encourage that we look seriously at it, that council, and I know that you guys have in the past, looked at many, many things where we've developed standards, and they've been fair standards and standards that we needed to change. It's gone in and progressively it's changed to meet the needs. So I would encourage that. Thank you.
All right, just a sec. I'll give the council an opportunity. Any questions for clarification? Seeing none, thank you for coming to address this public meeting. Okay, please come forward. You state your name and address, please.
Wayne McMurphy, 496 First Avenue. A resident of Petrolia, also a rural landowner. And everything that's been stated is accurate. There's already mice, there's already wildlife in town. I'm opposed to backyard chickens. As I'm aware tonight or before, but it was repeated again tonight, that there is already a bylaw in effect to not have livestock in town. Chickens are still livestock. So as the parents, the bylaws haven't been enforced since at least 2020, maybe previous to that. How are you going to enforce a multitude of new bylaws to take effect to monitor license and everything else? There's good dog owners, there's poor dog owners. But the dogs and cats, whether they're looked after or not, are considered pets. And I haven't heard any of these chicken owners in town that keep their chickens in their house as pets. This is their livestock. They're eating the eggs, they're eating the chickens. The place for them is rural.
Okay, all right, before you go, again, I'll ask council clarification or any questions. Again, and you are correct, the bylaw as it stands now states it is illegal, but it'll be up to this council what action they would decide to take. So thank you for coming to address this public meeting. Anyone else wishing to address this public meeting at this time? Okay, seeing none, I'll adjourn this meeting. And again, have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you for coming.